This is Jimmy. We're good friends. There's links of stuff that we do down there. And
Well, I'm glad I said something about it being
yeah.
not recorded. So here we are. We're recording now. So Cam, James, Jimmy, Cameron, here we are. Welcome.
Yeah. Yep. And
You and I have known each other a while, haven't we?
oh my God. Can I share a fun memory?
Please.
Oh my God. So I'm a very young man, and I got sucked into this beautiful vortex that was the teaching incarnation and extension of the master teacher of A Course in Miracles as a young man when he was just sitting with a few people in a lodge. And I was hit profoundly by an out of time experience that all time stopped, and we ended up doing a dance, and I couldn't believe he was in space time and all those kinds of things that happen to you when you have a holy instant. And so I ended up staying with him. You entered into the frame. At some point, my memory doesn't serve me specifically, but my fun memory is we were part of a restaurant, and we started making music there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I talked to you, and I was a very open kid, and you were saying, "Man, I need a guitar. I want to make some music or something." And I
The
was like,
blue
"Here, this is
guitar.
a guitar." And you looked at me, and I said, "Don't give me that dang guitar. That's your guitar." And I'm like, "Well, you would use it. I don't know, you know."
It was
And
blue, wasn't it?
no, it was a thin line. Dave Matthews used to play them. Those very small
Yeah.
electric acoustic. It was a Yamaha.
Yeah, I
And
remember it being blue for some reason.
really, oh man, yeah.
But I do
Anyway,
remember that. Let me share a memory
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
mine of when we first met. So when you and your mom and a small group of people came over from Australia, I was living in Chicago, and I was living on the south side of Chicago, a very, very difficult neighborhood, we'll say. And I was working in a beautiful center where we took in men and women who were homeless and had AIDS.
Wow.
And so you all came and you were going to spend a night or two with me. And I believe this is your first time in the US. And so here you go. You're in Chicago, which is
Yes.
where I am right now. And you came out to this South Side place. And I remember you just looking around as we drove through the streets in complete awe. And you said, "This is like being in Boys in the Hood."
Oh my God, that's the only cultural references I could come up with. Yeah. Yep. You must have been like, you must have looked at me like, oh man, I hope this kid survives.
I
Yeah.
knew you would.
Very well, having been exposed to a profoundly out of time holy instant experience, one of the things that happened to me at least was I felt very open, very undefended, so to speak, and that was a context that a little bit of gentle protection was needed. And so, yeah, you guys and my friends and everything kind of kept an eye on this wide-eyed
Yeah.
little kid from Australia.
Well, yeah, and well, we were all young, let's face it,
Yeah, oh
and
yeah, yeah.
but we were drawn, as you said, into a vortex of healing light and intensity that I had never experienced. I had different evolutions of my own spiritual path up until then, and yet when I received these little audio tapes from this guy who people called the master teacher, I thought, what the heck is that? But when I listened to the audio tapes, something was stirring within me. Something was moving up and down my spine. And I can remember my friend Lisa at this center that I was telling you about. She walked by my room. I said, "Lisa, get in here and listen to this and tell me if you feel something happening." And she said, "Yeah, it's interesting, but I don't feel anything." I said, "Well, I'm feeling something. Something is moving through me like this electricity." And I had to follow. And I did, and you did, and so many of us did. And And yes, there was this frame called the master teacher, Chuck Anderson, whatever you want to call him, and he was the fire that drew us in, but the fire was in each one of us, and we began to realize that the deeper we went.
Right.
And so that container in terms of time and space is still very real and whole within us, hopefully. And here we are, all these years later, chatting about it.
Right. Well, now I guess we find ourselves. Well, what's amazing about a profoundly personal spiritual experience is that it's to me it's a memory of an eternal um, reality, and so I think a lot of folks who have gone and continue on an expansive spiritual experience often find themselves having these moments of beautiful memory and encounter, at least for me. And my time in that context was, 20, 25 years or something. I don't even know, you know. But what ends up maturing is personal wholeness and completion with a touchstone of that event, because that event never leaves you. Just like you said, it becomes a living internalized experience. Um, and
Yeah.
so that's, I think, the power that we're experiencing in the moment. And often there's sort of, for me, being, on my maturity journey, um, it's been a sort of maturing and integrative uh, subsequent experience where, at the time, uh, it it gave me an alternative. I was young and looking for an alternative to the human experience, like a lot of 19-year-olds do. They'll go through these developmental stages and go, oh, okay, now I'm not a kid. Now I'm going to be a person in the world. I don't know about this world. This seems kind of rough. Seems like maybe I don't really like it, especially for sensitive spiritual people, right? And so one of the things that happened to me when I encountered the master teacher was a physical event that showed me that there was an alternative reality, so to speak, that was present all the time. But for me, um, for a little while, it was the solace of being able to transcend the world, right? And I I guess I needed that just to sort of give me the strength to continue to develop, so to speak. But at a certain point, it becomes an integrative event where it's not
Hmm.
really, now it's an inclusion of physicality, of time and space, of cultural context. We're citizens of Madison and Chicago. That's part of the what feels like tension creating forces within what it feels like to be in this moment. And one of the things that was so cool about your latest book was that you're speaking to this particular moment of space time, even though the programs that we've been involved in speak of timelessness and out of physical form, because there's, as we mature as spiritual beings, we understand that there's really no successful separation from those things, no matter whether you're in a body or not, or you know what I mean,
Yeah, you actually mentioned several times the spiritual maturation.
right?
That's very, very important because when this bright light association enters our mind and breaks through the barriers that we've kept to define that which is undefinable, until we go through that spiritual maturation, it's easy to claim and to make special. And that happens in pretty much every spiritual community,
Right,
and and that's okay. Just like it's okay for a first grader to be a first grader. A fourth grader doesn't look at a first grader and make fun of them.
right,
They're at a different stage, and you go through each stage in this the experience of this expansiveness, and we the specialness falls away. The higher we go in the grade system, the more the specialness falls away. I can remember back in the day, the attitude was, at least with some people, was you have to be here, you have to be doing it with the master teacher, or you're just dead. And that's a very low level of spiritual maturity. Because,
Thank you, and please forgive us all our youthful
yeah,
exuberance, right?
yeah,
You know,
there was exuberance, and that's okay. Just don't stop there,
right?
you know,
Yeah.
because there's still so much to be revealed and to be experienced, and it's all happening right now. So it served us well. I'm forever grateful to you, to all of my brothers and sisters at the academy, or even before that, God's Country Place.
Mm.
You know, I was actually, speaking of that, here in Chicago. I'm basically just here kind of taking care of this guy.
Hey, buddy.
I'm dog sitting
Yay.
before I go back to Mexico.
Mm.
And visiting me for a few days was
Mm.
Christian Lead, who was one of the very first, even before they all went to Chicago. He and Anna and others were with him here in Chicago.
Mm.
And so he was telling me a lot of stories of what it was like here at the Stop Smoking Center when the old man, the master teacher, dear one, whatever you want to call him, was having these small, intimate sessions expressing from his own whole mind what he knew, not what he believed, but what he knew to be true. And then ultimately getting the place up in Wisconsin, and then the very small, intimate group there, and then finally the explosion when people came from Australia, from Denver, from California, from Boston. And that's where the challenge always comes. The challenge it always comes when like in the Christianity, when Constantine declared the Christian experience as the official religion of the Roman Empire.
Mm.
That's where it really got difficult,
Yeah.
because you're no longer working to make it acceptable. Now it's universally acceptable.
Right.
Or you have, in the case of the academy, so many people come in from all the world, it must be special. Well,
Right.
it's not special unless everything is special. And that's the maturation. So here we are all these decades later. And as you know, we just had a kind of a reunion a few months ago. And that was wonderful because it brought together all these beautiful consciousnesses that had experienced that and integrated it, like you said.
Mm.
And it's just beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's a beautiful description. A couple of points. One thought, obviously, is that, sometimes, the youthful exuberance of feeling separate from the human condition is a wonderful way to feel safe, right? Because part of the emerging Christ in us does need protection. And that's partly why we create safe spaces and communities.
Yes.
For me personally, if I had been asked to continue my regular life after having that encounter, I probably would have needed a higher level of care. I wouldn't have been able to. I kind of lost the ability to speak for a few months because I something else was happening. You know what I mean? So, but like you said, with the youthful exuberance comes the feeling like you're exclusive or entitled because something special has happened to you, and that's a natural part of the human
Yes.
growth, right? But when you talk about the expansive story that we were part of, that included the master teacher's acceptance of his willingness to be the alpha and the omega for everyone who came into his vicinity, is a fascinating and remarkable eternal type story of an incarnation that accepts, and this is part of your journey too, accepts a role, so to speak, in a scenario where you're willing to be the truth to all comers. and the challenging journey that can be is some of the most incredible and beautiful and fascinating story, and a lot of us, we all experience a lot of gratitude for the Christ Jesus' incarnation, and also for the master teacher's willingness to never really accept his time-based story as reality for himself, as well as anyone who was willing to be in his vicinity. And his willingness to be accessible was so profound in that personal journey.
Mm.
And the physical challenges and the emotional challenges that really asked of him was not something that he shared personally with the flock, so to speak, maybe with a few close friends, but that also, creates a lot of affection in me, and I'm sure you too, because we understand what sometimes a physical and emotional deal is when you're willing to say, okay, this is where the truth exists in
Yeah.
my physical space or my proximity, or he would every day he would challenging himself to be the truth. He would walk down the stairs of our little academy and he would say, I'm the truth and the way and the light, and undergo the physical revolution on a daily basis of being that for however many people willing to sit in front of him. And now we're veering, I don't mean to, forgive me, I get on my soapbox. But,
That's all right.
we start
Yeah.
expressing the functionality of what it means to be a physical vessel of the light transformative, and what
Yeah.
it's like to share that in a gathering or an aggregation, and
You
how
know,
that
it,
feels.
it all comes down to either exclusivity or inclusivity, right? When, say, the master teacher says, I am the way, the truth, and the light, he's not being exclusive in that saying, this is who I am and that's not who you are.
Right.
His projection, his extension is that that's the only thing there is. So how can you not be that?
Right,
You know?
which is maybe unique in the corridors of folks, because it's easy to say those words and
Hmm.
they can be curated in a certain space, and ultimately be misleading for folks, because
Yeah.
it creates a barrier, and that was one thing wonderful about that. He and you teach that you are the way and the truth and the life.
Yeah, but first that has to be claimed. We'll
Yeah.
say the word individually. There is no individual, but in this consciousness that is expressing itself now, it has to be claimed before it can be extended. So I hear the master teacher say, I am the way, the truth, and the light. I hear you or anyone else say that. And now it's up to me to fully claim that, but not in an exclusive way, in an inclusive way
Right.
that includes everything and everyone. Now, someone who's not willing to do that will hear the old man walking down the stairs and see him, and he stands there and says, I am the way, the truth, and the light. And that mind will say, who the hell are you to say something like that?
Right.
Thinking that me projecting onto that consciousness that he means that in an exclusive way. But that's in my mind, not in his mind.
Right.
When he says, I am the way, the truth, and the light, he's saying that's all there is.
Right.
There's nothing else in the universe. People sometimes ask me, because I'm a priest, I'm a Franciscan, I do all these things that, are part of the identity. But, people, because of that identity, will say, well, you believe in God, right? The answer is no. I don't believe in a God, okay? The difference is I believe in only God.
Mm.
Okay, that's a big difference. There's not an entity, a being out there that I believe in, watching, judging, whatever. That's
Right.
all there is. Whereas, of course, the Miracles says only love is real.
Right.
God is love, and therefore so am I. We're of the same essence. But to integrate that, to live from that space in an inclusive way, a way that includes everything and everyone, Now, to have the reference of a consciousness like the master teacher, who that's all he can do.
Right.
Every other possibility has been, uh, it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So
Right.
to have that as an example is a brilliant thing, and I'm so grateful for it. And then it's up to me to either claim that or make him the guru, make him special.
Mm.
There's this thing I've been thinking about, and I think I'm going to talk about it tomorrow morning, our Namaste Village session.
Mm.
The idea of to and through, right? Let's
Mm.
take the master teacher for an example. It's if I stop, like I'm projecting or experiencing this wisdom, this light in him, but I
Right.
stop there. This is a typical guru relationship, and
Right.
I stop at the guru, then my experience therefore stops at the guru. But it's not meant in that way. It's meant to go to and through the teacher, through whatever expression it is of holiness and truth, to the whole of creation. Now it's useful. This is what Jesus meant when he said to be truly helpful, to and through. Even Jesus himself is saying, don't look to me as the only expression of this, because then you're going to stop right there.
Right.
And I don't want you to stop. I want this to flow and to move through and as you, but it has to. I mean, it's brilliant to have an example of a master teacher, a Yogananda, or whatever it is,
Mm.
but don't stop there. Let it move through that one to all, because that's all there is.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Well, I mean, the idea of guru in the Western canon is possibly a little bit misunderstood, partly because we don't have the context of Eastern historical spiritual mystery,
Mm-hmm.
and the guru in the Eastern context is often a formalized relationship where a student will meet a guru, and the guru will say, well, I'll be your guru for an agreed moment, and I will help you curate an advantageous, accelerated journey to the point where our agreement will be terminated as hierarchical completely. And so, in that sense, I was lucky enough to be exposed to the master teacher's acceleration, proximity, and thoughts and understanding. But yeah, there's not a lot of understanding in the Western sort of hemisphere that releases the idolatrous
That's
guru
right.
and actually includes that as a wonderful, loving, committed relationship. And you bring up Yogananda, and there's some lovely context with him and his guru, and they met. And he said, "Oh, I guess you young crazy kid, you can hang out with me for a minute." And then at a certain point, they basically shake hands and say, "We're done. We're done. Now you have made an acknowledgement that you are able to. Your maturity has reached a point where you can handle the profound magnitude of what it means to be God incarnate in your own storyline." And I think it's part of the fascinating journey of the master teacher was that he didn't necessarily have a lot of context about himself when he got the job, so to speak. His storyline was very unique. And some of you know that Ellie is my wife, and Ellie was a youth, very young, when his metamorphosis from human growing man into a fairly abrupt event that became the master teacher. And her story is fascinating and beautiful because she was sent to support these moments of total uncertainty and openness that he was experiencing. He had no idea what his context was. Like, things like the Course in Miracles would fall off a shelf onto his head, and he'd go, "What's this?" And he picked it up, and we've still got the book. It's right there, you know. It's basically turned into dust because he used it every day for 40 years. But it he was like, oh, like, and this is the part, I guess, part of the remarkable journey of the Christ Jesus was that his incarnation included the acceptance of releasing all contextual information about who he actually was in reality, to show that information and grace and faith brings about wholeness in every aspect and every interval, you know? And so with the master teacher kind of guru-ness was like weird to him. He's like, what am I guess I'll start teaching now because I know, you know, and then people would sit around and he'd be like, okay, guys, I guess I'll tell you what's going on. And it was an organic event that he matured into a self-understanding. And you know, I obviously I can't speak for him, but I can only speak to my experience of being a co-creator of that curated experience that he completed in time. And I, from my experience, was watching an amazing maturation through application, through teaching. And he would often say, if you've ever got a problem, teach. I think it was one of his very passionate assertions, you know, one of the many passionate assertions that he had if you ever were close to him.
You know, having a reference like Ellie, your wife, his daughter, or someone like Christian who was here sitting in that couch a couple of days ago, people who were part of that original sort of like, well, here we are. What do we do with this?
Yeah, right.
You know, he wasn't raised with that guru background, that Indian reference. He just, in fact, as you used the word abrupt, it was an abrupt, you know, it wasn't gentle. Now, he had to go through hell to get that, literally, being a soldier in World War II and alcoholic and everything that came. It just finally broke him down to the point that the light that was within just broke through. It came through. And what do you do with that? Well, if you have no reference, as he did, he didn't have any. He just started going to the Theosophical Association and just say, "Well, I guess I'll read this." And I remember a story where he said he came across a book and it said something about an avatar, and he asked the lady there at the desk, "What's an avatar?" And she told him. He said, "Well, I guess that's what I am." It was like these. He knew who he was, but he had no idea.
Right.
What that meant, you know.
He's like, oh, I guess that's me because that's what's happening.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's a very different context than, say, Yogananda, who at a very early age came to his guru Yukteswar and was kind of, you know, slowly brought into this realization.
Right.
And for him, it was like explosion. And yet he finally found the ground beneath him through a small group of dedicated people.
Right.
And it began to expand and expand until that group began to expand. But then the interesting thing, and this is where we find ourselves now, the moment came when he left his body, right? What do you do with that? Okay, so we always knew it wasn't about his body. It's not about him. It's not even about the community. So ultimately, the community dissolves, and it comes right back to me, to you, to each one of us, accepting the atonement for ourselves, right? And so this is, I think, the chrysalis was the being in that container. Now we've broken through the surface, and it's time to fully integrate, to realize that there is nothing but the Christ expressing itself in every moment. Can I choose to be that? Not with words necessarily, but through presence? Well, that's the only thing we're here to do. So, you know, what's left? Nothing.
Yeah. Well, and maybe everything.
Everything.
Right. Infinite possibilities all in one space. Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And the wild thing about opening to the energies of transformation and an understanding of true communication is that it's pretty big.
Compared to what?
Exactly. I don't know. I guess we're all just created beings on a journey of self-discovery. And
Hmm.
I hear you when you say everyone's story is unique, and that's another fine, wondrous thing that I felt as a youth being in the master teacher's presence. He curated a space for me to understand that being a perfect Cameron Christ is the only job that I have. Because when we're knocking around in the idea of, I guess I brought up the master teacher and gurus and way showers, so to speak, right? How our journey is often littered with the litany of holy instants and incarnate light experiences, and how that how does that, because often those experiences are fairly abstract, like love is abstract and perfect, and when we have a moment of holy instant, it doesn't necessarily inform the storyline, right? And
Hmm.
the master teacher, that's why the context for me was very essential, because I don't know how to exist without any boundaries. And he showed us how to forgive Cameron's storyline and lovingly accept it as the wholeness emerging. And that can be intimidating when you're around, you're a 24-year-old kid and you meet this character who's larger than life, who's full of blinding light and knowledge and certainty. And I'm kind of like, ugh, how do you follow that? You know what I mean? But really, the only story is that we all have to follow and lead at the same time. I don't know. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but like, I
No,
think
that's
a
very
lot of,
true.
yeah, like the maturation of this wholeness that you speak of includes the acceptance that I'm the clay that I've been given to work with. And it just isn't fruitful to be battling against that. And I think a lot of us, like for me, I'm very idolatrous and I wanted to be him. I really did. And I am not him and I will never be him. And I don't have to be him. But
Hmm.
that's a journey.
That's part of
That,
the maturation. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Back in the day, uh, I'm sure you'll remember this. This is part of the community's maturation. Those who knew the master teacher knew that he had a very particular style of teaching, right?
Yeah.
That was profound, powerful, and sometimes very difficult.
Mm.
And he would not play. I remember one time. Okay, so we weren't speaking about football, but I'll speak about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I'm in Chicago. He was from Chicago, moved up to Wisconsin, and one day we're at one of the hotels, and he comes out for a visit, and he's walking by me, and I just sort of said quietly, "So, now that you live here in Wisconsin, are you still a Bears fan?" And
Oh,
and he goes, yeah, yeah. And the next day, holy mackerel, did I get
oh
it? Did
boy.
I get it? For to try and pull him in to the identity of a Bears fan was like this expansion into this retracted identity,
Mm.
and so he had this, very, and it was so great. It was, I always found that when he went at me, if I did not defend, if I just opened up, it was bliss and activation, right? And those, as we've had seen, that would defend or put up a shield, that would be hell, right?
Oh,
So what happened in the maturation of the community is, the feeling for some, not for all, but for many, was that we need to teach like him,
right.
all right? We need to go out and bash people around kind of like he does.
Right.
And that's not organic to me. It's not organic to you, and it's organic to very few.
Right.
The analogy that I use is that it was like he was a master surgeon, and he could look at you and he would know right where the cancer is, and he would
Mm.
reach in and he would pull it out. And trying to imitate that is like trying to do surgery without going to med school. You're going to pull someone's heart out, right? There is a natural exuberant expression of Cameron, of Jimmy, of whoever it might be, and if that's natural, then Holy Spirit will use it. If it's not natural, it's just you asserting an identity that is not real and is going to hurt. That is not being truly helpful.
Right.
Anyway, we found that a lot in the community, but then that maturation, that began to shift, where people realize that,
Yeah.
like you said, I don't need to be the master teacher. You know, he has his own unique style that's organic to him, and I have mine. Mine is loving, mine is direct and uncompromising, but not the same as it would be for him. So there is this individual expression of this reality that needs to be honored rather than honoring someone else's, someone that we think is different than us or separate from us. And to find the way that Holy Spirit organically uses me, uses you, and go with that. Stop trying to be him or her or someone else. Just be who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's well said. Well said. Well, for context, he was a Marine. He was a
Yeah.
drill sergeant, and he loved it. He loved to be that, but he also, and this is sometimes something lost, and it does include a little bit that guru a student relationship. If it's easy to say any of these words, but the truth is the manifest responsibility and representation. And the master teacher was many things, because he spoke and he taught continuously for 40 years, or whatever the time was. But part of what he accepted, and this is where the authenticity emerges, is that he would never and has never left me in a commitment to be whole and in light. And it sort of creates a lot of forgiveness in that way, and like you said, humanness, we like to masquerade being something that feels like successful, but until you understand the accountability that being the Christ for someone it has, and that's given me a lot of forgiveness too, because I was witness to some pretty passionate moments from the master teacher that weren't always pretty, but the incredible responsibility that he accepted was part of that intense journey relationship. You know what I mean? And but the maturation of getting to be who you are is freedom, isn't it? I don't know, it's often experienced as a profound moment, I think, for folks when they realize that, because it's hard to believe that you're enough, and that's, I guess, the psychotherapy part of me that a lot of us encounter. We just go, well, how could I possibly be a powerful event in this world when I'm struggling emotionally, or whatever it is that our story is, that I've been buffeted by the sands of time, and ultimately they indicated that I'm not going to be successful in form, or I will age and die, and the only account will be, if I'm really lucky, I'll get a library. You know what I mean? And he would talk a lot about that. You're waiting for me to die, so you'll put up a statue and the pigeons will shit on my head, He's such a beautiful man. He made us laugh, didn't he? But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, the whole idea of worldly success, using this in order to achieve success in the world, is very strange. And I have been blessed by, we'll use the word success, having some books and some movies and whatever. It's been lovely, but it has absolutely nothing to do with anything. I mean,
Right.
it could have gone the exact opposite
Except
way.
your beautiful acceptance of responsibility that you've made an agreement with the Christ to do everything that Jimmy is good at to spread love in the world. And
Yeah,
that
it's
I think
fun.
is, well, it's fun, but I want to thank you. I do. And I think that's like real, and I do. Because you don't, I know you're naturally attracted to the creative aspect of sharing love, and it takes all these wonderful forms of community and videos and music and books and creative. Like when you're exchanging with the Holy Spirit in a transformative personal event, that's where true joy is, right? But it's
Hmm.
also, you don't have to do that. You've made an agreement to, I don't know, me, that you will represent the truth, right? And I think that's an incredible gift that you've given personally. And I just wanted to thank you.
Well, I received that and thank you for that. And I guess I've been around the block long enough to see the opposite and to see that that's not what I want. We're called to be authentic in this awakening dream. You know, we're waking up from the dream of separation, and however that happens is how it happens. And
Yeah,
if we're writing books, if we're reading books, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
Uh, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I've had the chance to extend in creative ways. And you're the same. You're very creative, and this is how we extend the love, is through
right,
creating as God creates. So
right.
good on you.
Thank you. And I thank you for the wonderful information of decloaking, and the master teacher really struggled in many ways to try, and he did his best to decloak himself. But it was very easy in some ways because he was so consistent and so brilliantly shaking bright light with Kundalini energy, that it was a challenge to demystify him. And he tried it often and all the time. He would visit restaurants and hang out and have summer parties and, ride on the back of motorbikes with people and stuff in a way to say, guys, we're all the same, I
Hmm.
was part of that dynamic tension and conundrum that he often faced, because when you set yourself up as a teacher, and you just expressed it brilliantly and beautifully, once you've taken the balloon and you're now the Wizard of Oz, you know that you're just the guy behind the curtain. And that sometimes we actually have to have our own storyline and journey to get to the authentic acceptance of that. Like for me personally, I just a musician, wanted to be a rock star. So I guess I had to play music for a lot of my young life before I realized, like, this identity relationship is a journey that we go on. Maybe for some, maybe not for you, but for me, like, I had this conversation with my daughter. Sometimes I feel unrealized or in potential or unseen as a musician in the world, say, for whatever reason. And my daughter looked at me and said, I think of you as a wonderfully accomplished and whole artist. And I don't know why you think there's potential in it. And I was like, part of this process is the acceptance of wholeness, right? Like with you, I'm sure you've thought on your journey that, all of these amazing creative outlets were beautifully, passionately expressed. And when that kind of cycles through time, then you go, well, am I any different? Maybe I'm just the same guy. Maybe I'm learning through doing that. That's not the information that translates into an eternal relationship, But sometimes the human story really is is
Yeah.
it's part of forgiving yourself for the journey. You know what I
And
mean?
we have to go through whatever we go through.
Right?
I mean,
Yeah.
I can remember back in the day when I first started writing and things were really getting out there, and I would have friends that would, get on Oprah, and the thought would come in, well, how come I'm not on Oprah?
Yeah, right. I gotta get me on Oprah. Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
I know. I mean,
Right,
how come they're doing better than me? And there's always that comparison. There's
right.
always another, and they're doing something that I think that I'm not doing, and so I would not realize what I was doing, how I was the extending this creative pulse, and how it was having an effect because I was focused over here at what
Right.
this person was doing rather than what was happening here. And it doesn't matter if you're speaking to two people or 200,000. I mean, it seems to matter, but ultimately, it's all about me. It's
It's
all
about the
about my
relationship.
awakening.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really no difference. Sometimes playing to smaller rooms is harder because the intimacy is more palpable. I think the master teacher went maybe through his journey a little bit with that too. I'm sure I'm just an observer outside, so I cannot speak for him and his experience. But it seemed like there were these moments where he would be grappling with these ideas and putting himself on the hot seat. And towards the end of his sort of teaching cycle, I think his favorite thing to do was to give kids at the Cheese Factory restaurant a Milky Way bar. You know,
Mhm.
he he had used himself up through his very intense journey in a certain way, and these are things that just conjecture. Like I said, I can't speak for another consciousness. I was just still on my journey, but yeah, like you said, it was funny because sometimes he would look at us and go, "Oh, you guys, let me be your accomplishment." And at the time, I thought, okay. And in that singular moment, maybe that was the shared experience. But unfortunately, everyone must go through their own journey. There's really no, I mean, it's already so highly curated. Just being human is a highly curated, transformative experience. You know what I mean? And we're all like so impatient. I was like, well, I'm sitting in front of the guru now. It's all light. I don't have to be anything. And this was some of the ego maturation that some of my loved ones had to go through, is that they thought divesting their selves of their own story or their ego timeline was the simplicity. Yet the inclusive maturation through being whole ego is the completion of the journey, and you really can't deny, because you're actually a created being. You're a unique personality, and the ego is a process of maturation of that, of a reflection and understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember watching him sitting there wishing on a star that he could save us. He would say, I'm trying to save you pain, right? And that's, I think, some of the savior's dilemma in a lot of ways. I'm sure you experience that too. You just look at folks that you come into contact and you go, oh my God. Just like your latest book, you're like, guys, leave the space. Leave a space for the unknown. Like, we have to. And
Yeah.
that's how we save time, not by pugilistically fighting for a polarized idea. We're not going to be successful on either side of a polarized event that won't ultimately be eternal, right? You know. Well, well, aren't we having fun? And we can hang out all day. And I appreciate you, and I love you, and I thank you for your time. And
I'm so grateful, and for the shared experience here. It's wonderful to know that we have mighty companions
it really
that
is.
we can say go way back, but it's
Yeah,
all right here.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we've had shared experiences, shared references, and for anyone who was with the old man who's listening to this, you can relate, or people who had no experience, you can still relate. Uh,
Right.
because it doesn't matter whether you were in the room or not. It just matters right now. Are you willing to take that step? And
Yeah. Are
it's
you willing to
beautiful.
let your mind open? Just like, referencing maybe the first thing you said when you heard the cassette, something like a quantumly entangled out of time sequence hit you that was a resounding sense of truth in your own tuning
Mm-hmm.
fork,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe we hope and pray that these experiences that we're sharing could be experiences translatable for the truth of them, because our human story is definitely unique, but it's also completely
Yeah.
the
And
same.
it brought me to this,
Hey, baby.
and this
Yeah,
is where it just keeps on going. Thank you.
right. Oh,
And
man.
thank you, Cam, thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
Yeah, it's great. And maybe we could talk about the course of love a little bit next time or something. I
That'd
don't
be
know.
good.
Yeah, right. Yeah. All right, James. Have a beautiful day. I love you and thank you for everything.
Love you, Cam. And
Talk
give my
soon.
love to Ellie.
Okay. Bye bye.